All right. So I wanted to, we'll come back to my non-working version the way I left it last week, and that'll be your spot to jump in. But I wanted to show you one cute little thing that was happening to me until I realized I didn't have a proper annotation. So here I'm going to open my my working project here, and let's see. Now, where do I want to go? Let's try this PC. Come on, there it is. And some of this stuff is not always easy to get a quick answer on when you start looking around, Googling, and so forth. But I think I mentioned that in the purchase .java that we built, where we use the annotations against the globals, if you, oh, there it is, I already had it. I didn't want to show you that. If you, yeah, oh, you've already figured that out. So if you have a global which you do not want as, which is not a data field in the table, so there's no mapping, if you put the global either at the beginning or at the end, after you've identified the entity, this will happen. I'll run my application here. And because the way we structured it, the purchase well, yeah, doesn't fix it. No, it's working. We'll show you. Okay, so so view transaction. So we got to this point, and it's gonna throw an error because I've got that global currency formatter. So if I try to view transactions, it brings up this error, and this is kind of useful because you get to see the way the JPQL is building its actual query, SQL query. So it's trying to select cur, my variable, as one of the fields from the entity mapping. And so I just wanted to point out that the way to fix that is this annotation transient. So if you go down here and put at transient, it'll want an import for the persistence, all of these items. So transient has already been imported into. Yeah, no, right. So in our version, we moved it because it was just easy enough to move down to, and I think I still have it here, down to the get amount. So I put the currency formatter in the get amount so it won't bother us. But if you have globals that you really need as globals and they're not a part of the mapping to the database, you use the at transient annotation. And so now, if I run it, there it is. And I view transactions, they come up. So no error. So just a little side note that I wanted to bring to your attention. All right, so we're back in our version that we left last week. And you were going to build a purchase DB for me so that I might pull my individual purchases, and this required the use of a new return type. I mean, not new, but required a use of a collection return type. So who would like to help me out with our public static? I just followed our author. I think we can return different collection types if we want, but I returned a simple list of purchase objects called get purchases. And what do we need? Those of you who how many were successful, by the way, who worked on it and were successful? And only one is admitting to it. How many worked on it? Okay, so we had a few more of that. Okay, well, let's see what we get here. So we're going to do a string send of memID. Now, I'm going to leave it at that for the moment because I'm going to build the app without the date selection that we have on purchases, and then we'll go back and we'll look at these things called dates and how we manage them. So let's see. I need the import for the list, utility list entity. And again, I'm primarily interested in what you had for your JPQL setup. But let me grab from MemberDB. We can grab our entity manager call, and we'll need a bunch of imports out of that. Okay. So we have our entity manager, and if you want a string, I'm going to keep calling mine QS. What does it look like? I guess okay. Select P from purchase. So remember that you're referring to the Java object. I really always want to write SQL code here, but that's not what's happening. Okay. All right, where? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I'm leaving out purchase date for the moment. We'll come back and do it. Okay, and so what you should have discovered if you'd gotten that far is that you can do an order by on the column, but again, P always refers to the Java object, so our variable name in purchase is purch date. Okay. So then we're going to create our typed query. Of purchase, whoops, that should have been that, of purchase reference, and we will do an EM create query using QS and the class designation purchase.class. I guess that's not going to quite fit on my screen, so I'll bring that line down here as well. All right. Looks like I need an import if I've spelled it correctly. So we'll import typed query from our persistence package, and then we'll set the parameter. So Q set parameter of memID as the string memID that came into our static method. Yeah, so now we just have to have a list object which we can fill and return. So I'm going to create my list of purchase objects P, and I'm actually going to initialize it to null to start. And then I'm going to try to do a get using my query. So in a try catch scenario, we will set P, our list of purchases, equal to Q dot, and this time it's get result list. So it's figured out that we're returning a list, so we do a get result list. And then our author says that it could return null or empty. And so we're going to check for both of those. Null or P dot is empty. P is my variable. So P is my list. So we're checking to see if the list, if the list returned null or empty. Okay. Yeah. I probably should have made it the plural, but mine's just P. So if it's either of those, we're going to return null so that our code in the servlet will only have to check for null. Okay, and then we have the catch possibility of no result exception. And we will also set P to null in that case. Oh, and I need my import. No result exception. But at the end of that, a finally to close our entity manager. Always have to remember that, and we return P. I don't know if it had no result exception or not. Okay, just yeah, you would think, and I guess it didn't actually ask me to catch that exception, but just being careful. The problem, yes, good question. Why do I have to check for null if I'm checking for null or empty? And here's the problem. If it returns as null and I only check for empty, it'll throw an exception. So because Java checks only as far as it needs to, we check for null first because I can't do an isEmpty method on a null object. So if it came back null, and all I try to say is if p.isEmpty, that throws an exception. But good question. Okay, so we're returning either a list, if we get one back, or a null entity. And we're at this point, we're only considering the member ID as our where condition. We will improve upon that in due time, due course. Okay. Show purchases servlet. So we're at a point now. We still need to go back to the member update servlet as well to consider the date issues. But if we try to get something going here for our purchases. Wait a minute. What doesn't it like? It doesn't like something about my purchase DB? Hold on. Did I miss something? Oh, no. Okay. So purchase DB is okay. But show purchases servlet has a problem. All right. I'm going to need some additional values when I'm all done here. So I will add the, well, we are going to have to, well, we're going to have to do a little something with dates eventually. But right now, I'm just going to have to declare a list object, and here I did call it purchases, so I'm being a little inconsistent. But I'm going to have a list. Now what happened? What the heck happened to my side? I'm missing the side of my. That's strange. I'm not running this thing yet. Let me try that again. I'm going to close this, save it. Well, that one looks okay. Yeah, but no, that's weird. I don't know what was going on there. Well, and because the little help items show up over there. Oh, well. Okay. So I'm declaring my list of purchases, purchase object list purchases, and I'll add the util list import. Okay. In the try catch, for the moment, I'm going to comment out a bunch of stuff. I do want to recover my member, so the member object M will come in, but after that, I'm going to comment down to, well, pretty much the whole thing here. Okay, so we're going to end up commenting out our little error, and I do all the way down to the connection pool, since that will be going away. Yeah. Okay, I think we're. Yeah, supposedly the implementation of the JPA will take care of pooling and yeah. So it's doing all that stuff for us behind the scenes. I don't know if it's really good at that, but yeah, that's the idea. Anyway, so we comment out a lot of stuff. And then I'm going to, well, let's see, I'm trying to figure out where I want to go with this, because I'm going to have some code coming back when we start to talk about dates. I think I will go down below my commented code. And I'm not going to catch a SQL exception any longer. So let's just make that an exception catch. Let me look at my notes here. Yeah, okay. I had changed that and didn't even think about it. Okay. So we have our member, which can give us the member ID. And we've already observed that quite a lot of code is resolved by the JPA implementation. So let's simply try to fill our purchases list object with a purchase DB call to get purchase, or get purchases, and the member object is M, and we will get the member ID out of that, and that will be the value that we send to our purchase database. Okay, we need to check if it came back null. So if purchases is null, then I'm going to set my error message. So the error message will be a, well, we'll just do a plus equal. Purchases returned null. We'll just give some simple little comment. But otherwise, we are going to go ahead and put the object, the list object, on the request so we can forward ourselves. Oh, I'm sorry, I was trying to see where I was headed. So the default URL is to go to member screen. So I'm going to change that. So my new location, since I think I have purchases, is to go to /purchases.jsp. And the other thing that we need to double check is what we're calling the object. So what we've already, and you can see the request. In fact, I can even copy this line. So we've got the purchase object, as far as the JSP is concerned, is called PUR. And so I'm going to grab that line and bring it down here. So it's PUR, but it's purchases in terms of the way I named the list. Okay. So that should do it. And the thing is, if our purchase object is still correctly formulated, then the JSP should work without much interference. So let's take a look at our web pages and just double check our purchases JSP. So it's going to go through every purchase, put it in an object P, and try to get the date, the type, the transcode, description, and amount. And if we go over to our purchase JSP, which is now what the list contains, we should see that we have gets for all of those: purchase date, trans type, transcode, and trans description, which now returns the it runs the get trans description method against the transcode object, which is linked with our one-to-one connection. And that was up here. We have a one-to-one with fetch eager, so it does it immediately. Join column, transcode, not insertable, not updatable, because all we're trying to do with this object is get the description. Oh, my get, you're right. That is going to throw an error. Thank you for noticing that. Yeah, trans type here. So purchase DT, but trans type, we made that change. Transcode, trans description, and amount. Let me go back and double check all those. So get trans type, purchase DT. Oh, also though, we don't want a date. If we get purchase DT, we'll get the date itself. So we want to do purchase DT S, and that's a capital S. So we'll go back to our purchases screen. Purchase DT S, kind of looks funny, but there you go. Okay, and purchase again, transcode, trans description, and just amount. So it is just AMT, returning the currency formatted amount. Okay. Now what I am actually going to leave for you all, there's going to be one little thing that you get to do this week, and that is the total. So we're going to lose our total line and the way I've built it so far, and so you'll have to put that back. But I will leave that for you to do. Shouldn't be too hard. But I think we're ready to test and see if this will now pull purchases without regard to a date entry. So here we go. Why is it saying my club is running? Did I leave it running? There's my user that I've been going for all the time. Okay, so it doesn't do anything with those fields, so I'm just going to try to view transactions. And does it crash or does? Oh, I've got an error. Okay. Named query, select P from purchase where P mem ID, order by P purchase date, not found. No, well, no. Yours worked. Mine didn't work. Something I did in Purchase DB. So this should work as well. Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. You know, this has been a problem, that the IntelliSense is not giving me, you know, I'll scroll down and try to hit tab and it doesn't come up right. And I don't know, and it's happened several times. Right, so I had named query instead of query, so that was my problem. Yeah, that should do it. Yes, thank you. All right, we'll try again. Now we'll try. Hey, there we go. Okay. So our entity is working, purchase entity with the link to the transcode, the TBL codes table. We're getting our values. But now we have to think about this nasty date problem. Everyone else okay? Okay. What sort of error are you getting? Okay, I better come take a look at that. So our next step is to adjust our coding so that the purchase DB can also control by the date, and then we have to figure out how to get it the date. So I'm going to change. I actually did it with overloaded methods, a static method that takes both a string memID and a date, and that was kind of a bit of extra coding that I don't think we needed. So I'm going to go ahead here in my purchase DB and add date PD as another parameter, and we'll need the import for Java util date. And then, yes, we should be. I didn't check that lately. Properties, yeah, JDK8. So what I intend to do is send a null value if there's no date that's been chosen, been entered by the user. So I'm simply going to put an if block in here. Oh, well, I guess I need to. Well, I'm going to have two different query strings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see what you, yeah. Right, right. Either, well, either way, either approach is fine. Yeah, yeah. All I'm saying, all I'm going to do here, and originally I had done it as an overloaded static method that, so we had one that was string memid and one that was date PD. And you're right. If you just see a null, then you call this one. So it's you know, it's just a style issue. Yeah. So I'm going to check and see if the date is null. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I need to declare my string first, and then I'm going to set it here. So if we are null on date, then we have the query that we've already seen work in almost all cases, except Mr. Finlay. And then the alternative, which just needs an AND clause. So let me make sure I get this. So I'm going to have AND p.purchase date greater than or equal to PD as a parameter now. Oops, I guess I needed to. Oh, you know that you're right. I think that's why I did it as an overloaded, because we have to do. We really have parameter issues as well, so we've got to do it again down on our parameters. Ah, well. So we'll go ahead and add that. Yeah, is it? Yeah. Okay. So we've got do it. Yeah, do it in pieces. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We want the purchase. So the purchase date out of the file will be. We only want dates that are this date or forward. Right. So it builds the select. Yeah. 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 All right. I'm just going to put another if in. So if PD is not null, then we have a parameter, a Q set parameter for PD as PD. Feel free to improve upon my code in any way that you like. All right, so two alternatives now. One that takes a date, one that doesn't. Both return a list of purchase objects. And I think that is all we're going to need in our DB. Okay, so let's go back to the servlet. The servlet if I could manage to click on the servlet. What? Oh, good heavens. I'm having a time of it here. Okay. The servlet will now also need to consider date. And I'm going to go up here and declare a couple of more variables. So we're going to have a date object, which I can go ahead and just call PD. And that will be a text, a Java util, sorry, util.date, not SQL, but util.date. And this was one of your homework items. You wanted to figure out how to go from strings to date so we can actually send it as a date. And we can do that with our simple date formatter. So simple date format SDF will be a new simple date format, and the expectation based on the way we did member screen is DD and YYYY. So that is the kind of format we want in our simple date formatter, what we expect to give it. So if you import your Java text simple date format, so that's where the date was in the text. All right, so now we need to try to recover some code here in order to construct our date out of the string values that come in from the form and turn it into a date so we can have PurchaseDB do its thing against the database. So I'm going to recover, I'm going to do this line by line, the month, day, and year. I don't know why the connection pool stuff was in that location, but I do want to check to see if any of the fields rather are empty. So I've got an if line down here. Oh, this version of my show purchases is really poor, isn't it? It doesn't allow for problems in the input fields. I had this all in try catches, but all right, we'll do it this way. So I'm going to bring back my empty checks. So if month, day, or year is empty, I am going to set PD to null. In fact, I'm going to get the rest of this code out of the way here. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to build our date. And I'm going to do this in a try-catch because the simple date formatter, if it fails to take your string value and turn it into a date, produces a parse exception. So I'm going to do a try, and the try is that the PD date will be a parse, so SDF, my simple date formatter, parsing our string, and the string will look something like this. Month plus hyphen plus day plus hyphen plus year. And with luck, that works. Otherwise, we have a possibility of a parse exception, E, and we will need an import for the parse exception, so Java text parse exception. And if we can't parse it, we'll simply turn it back to a null, and they don't get that. We could also consider a message, but well, maybe that should be, yeah, that should probably be an error message, shouldn't it? So we'll set message equal to illegal date value. Okay. So now I can fix down below, and this will be done if message is empty. I should have done that before. So if message is empty, then we will do all of these lovely things. First one is that purchase DB now gets member ID and PD as the parameters to the method. So we try and recover purchases. If it's null, that'll throw a message. Otherwise, we can move on with our purchases. An exception anywhere along the way that we haven't tracked will throw a message, and we continue to move forward in the same way to purchases or back to the member screen. So I think that should do it. But going back up to the code, so our little bit of magic with dates is this parsing method of the simple date format. Yes, there's an import for the parse exception. Okay. Yeah. Let me clean and build and see if I have removed all of my errors now. Yes, okay. So I think I'm ready to test. And Mr. Finley, I'll be interested to see if your system still throws a similar SQL error. Yeah. All right. So now, I first want to see if no entry still produces the correct list. Seems to have. And I note that I have 3 transactions after July, or in July, so I'm going to return to the member screen, and I will try 7/1/2016 and see if I only get 3 transactions out of my list. Oh, this time it worked, without typos and weird things happening. Let's go back 1 month just to make sure. All right. Any luck out there? Yes, no? Now, unfortunately, I have run out of time, which I did not really expect today, because we were going to have a guest lecturer on a neat little date validation. Mr. Denke was going to come up and show you some code that he'd written. So I guess we will have to do this next week. Oh well, I mean, this is Yeah, I want you to walk through it. So the issue, I want to go back to the member update. I have 3 minutes. Maybe if I can take my 3 minutes and go a minute or two over. We'll set the stage, and then at the very beginning of next week, I'm still going to require you to turn this in sometime next week. But anyway, if you go to the member update servlet, you will recall that we had commented out the setting of the member date, which wasn't really an updatable field, but we're going to go ahead and make it an updatable field. And you can do that in a similar fashion. So if everybody got that code with that one line that was commented out. So we're going to bring this back, but we're not going to use the string member date. So if memdate, the string, comes back from the input form as non-empty, which it should always be something, we're going to go ahead and update the value even though it may or may not have changed. And so in a try-catch again, because of our date issues, we're going to have our simple date format as a new simple date format of mmdd YYYY, and that's going to require some imports here. So let's import the simple date format. That also now means that we can potentially catch a parse exception, which we'll import. So it's basically the same code we've just seen. All right, it doesn't throw it yet. It will. Okay, and so what we're going to do is create a date MD, member date, as an SDF parse of memdt. And that, I still need imports. Imports everywhere. Java util date. I had a typo there. SDF is what I meant. Okay. And now this line of code, setting the member date, comes back up into the try, but it's MD that is now sent to the object. Okay, and so we do a catch as an MSG plus equal illegal date value. Because there's an interesting little problem that occurs, which our guest lecturer will explain his solution to, but we'll have to leave that for next week. Even though you should come, well, we'll make the due date a week from now plus a day, so we have a chance to take a look at the very end of it. All right, so I think I've got what I need. Let me review my code here. So we've got the date formatter. We create a date object and we parse the user's input or the page form item into it. If all that goes well, we can set member date, because MD is a date object, which is what the member expects now. Otherwise, we have illegal date value or there was no date found. Okay. So if we run this now, and I'll only take another minute or two of your time here, we should have success. So I'm going to change the year on our member date. We'll change the day as well. So we'll go up one day and to 2009 as our member date. And if we update member data, I'm getting that the member was updated, and it looks like the date has been taken. So let's go back to the login screen just to be sure and re-authenticate and pull that data again. And there you go. So we now have a successful update on our member date. But watch what happens if the user puts in the date, backwards. and we try to update the member data. It does update the member data, member updated, but because the format that the user didn't enter or entered an incorrect format versus our date format expected, we get crazy results. Here's an interesting one. If you put in 13/1/2009 and update the date, it turns it into 1/1/2010. So odd little things happen, and we have a date validator that Mr. Denke here in the front has written, and he will show you that next week when we start. But we're out of time for today. But I think we've got everything working. Did I leave something for you? I don't remember if I've left any. I mean, obviously the add transactions was always your. We haven't done anything with that, and you can. That's an extra credit item. But today, was there something that I? To implement JPA all the way through the add transaction servlet. The totals, that was it. Thank you. Yes. So remember that when you have your final version, the show purchases screen should still show the balance due for the member, and it should be the well, we'll make it as easy as possible. You only have to calculate the balance due for the transactions that are showing. That's easier. If you want to do it the other way, I'm happy to have it that way as well. If you want to do the balance due for the user or the member for all his account, for his total account, that would be fine. Okay, I mean fine as well, and I could probably give you extra credit for that. Okay, so posting the additional transactions and/or taking it the JPA all the way through, we'll consider this the end of ClubDB with Eclipse Link, and we'll try and start Hibernate next week. And I have to build a new project for you in some fashion, so that's what's been taking me a while. And otherwise, we'll see it. We'll also see a little date validator code come up next time. Yeah. So when you're in your final version, the add trans servlet is not the end of the process. This just gets you to the page. It builds that drop down. So right. So there is a on this on the add trans JSP. When it displays it, there is a form post trans. So yes, so that is a servlet which I have not addressed at all because that's really kind of review code. Oh, the total is just on the show purchases. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We will call it a day.